For those of you that have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Juan Lopez, and I'm one of the school counselors here at Branham. We're going to do introductions in just a bit, but just a couple of logistics before we get started. Please note that tonight's recording or presentation is being recorded and will be made available to you via the Student Services website, hopefully tomorrow or Thursday at the latest, along with a PDF copy of the PowerPoint. Please also know that this is a webinar style meeting, meaning that you can see us, but we cannot see you. There's also no mute button that you need to worry about on your side of the screen. The raised hand is a feature at the bottom of your screen. It's not active. So for any questions that you do have, please make sure that you use the Q&A session or section, throughout the presentation. Also, please wait for those questions towards the end of each of the college panelist presentations. And then we do have a second part to tonight's meeting with just a counseling presentation from Branham counselors, where we'll do the same thing. And again, the recording and PDF copy of the presentation will be available hopefully tomorrow, but Thursday at the latest. Unfortunately, we don't have translation in Spanish, so just a quick note. Para los padres de familia, desafortunadamente no tenemos traducción esta noche. Tuvimos un problema técnico, así que si nos dan la oportunidad, vamos a seguir con la presentación el día de hoy. Vamos a volver a grabar la presentación, pero en español, y la vamos a poner en nuestra página web. Creo que para mañana o más tardar el jueves, para que ustedes lo puedan tener acceso con la misma información en español. Así que mil disculpas. And just really quick, this is our agenda for tonight. The bulk of the presentation really is from our college panelists. We have Community College, California State University, University of California. Ms. Morella will actually be acting as one of the college panelists tonight. Private schools and out of state, a lot of really good information, and they will each be presenting on a part of the admissions process for college application season for your seniors next year. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers from our panelists, followed by a brief counseling department presentation. So before we move on, do you want to make quick introductions again? My name is Juan Lopez, and I'm one of the school counselors here at Branham. I'll pass it on to Ms. Bloom.
Hey everyone, my name is Samantha Bloom, and I am also one of the counselors here at Branham. I work with students with the alphabet A through FE.
Ms. Morella.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Ms. Morella. I'm one of the school counselors, and I work with students with the last names LI to RH.
Mr. Lieburn, are you there?
I am. Good evening. My name is Vince Lieburn, and I work with students RI through Z. Welcome.
Ms. Vangsa.
Good evening. My name is Patty Vongsa, and I am one of the other counselors at Branham High School. I work with students who have a 504 plan and who are going through the SST process.
Ms. Chomet.
Good evening. My name is Sandrine Chomet. I am the College and Career Specialist here at Branham, and I am located in room 45. Welcome, everybody.
And our college panel, Amy.
Good evening, everyone. Amy Gutierrez from West Valley College. I'm an outreach counselor located there.
Marlene.
Hello, my name is Marlene Perez. I am one of the admissions counselors and recruiters from San Jose State.
Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Ortiz Garcia. I am one of the associate directors at USF, and really excited to be here with y'all tonight.
And Ruth.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruth Rodriguez, and I'm an assistant director in the Office of Admissions at University of Oregon.
And before we get started with the actual college panels, I do want to thank you all for being here tonight, and our college panelists for taking the time to share this information with our families here at Branham. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your time. And I think we'll get started with community college.
So hello again, everyone. So happy to be able to speak with you. You are so fortunate being here in Santa Clara County because you have so many options for community colleges. And even though I currently work for West Valley College, Most of the information I give you tonight is going to be touching on all of the community colleges in the state, but I'll also address those that are all in our backyard. So from Foothill, De Anza, San Jose City, Mission College, Evergreen, and then we also have Gavilan, which is not located on the map. I'm a visual learner, and so I like to share maps with you so you can kind of get an idea of where you can go. For the community colleges, we have three main purposes at community colleges. The first is to help students be able to, and so in helping students be able to transfer, next slide, we have them start with us, and then they can go to a range of different four-year colleges. And so all of the other panelists who are speaking today, they all accept students who start at a community college. And so students can start with us and go to a CSU, a UC, out-of-state public, private colleges, even international colleges. If you can click again. When they are with us at the community college, they will fulfill courses that are both GE requirements and also requirements for their major. And so they start with us, they fulfill some coursework in both of those areas, and then they prepare to transfer. There are some special things to keep in mind for the transfer world. Next slide. If students are looking to transfer to a CSU, and there are 23 CSU campuses, go ahead and click. They are able to do a regular transfer, which gives countless number of different majors. And so there are literally hundreds of different potential majors. They'll want to work closely with a college counselor to ensure requirements are met. Some examples include things such as architecture, nursing, engineering. Yeah. In addition, for the CSU system, there's something special called an ADT, an associate degree for transfer. That's a special program through the CSUs, and they commit that if students do 60 units at the community college, they only have to do 60 more units when they transfer. And they also guarantee that they give you them a GPA boost for admissions purposes. And they also guarantee a commitment that you can finish your bachelor's degree 2 years after you leave the community college. So it's a great deal, a great opportunity for our students. The only catch is that it's for a limited number of programs. So the CSU started this probably like 10 years ago, and they've only rolled out a limited number of majors. And so when you're considering which community college to attend, you might want to look and see where do they have an ADT. You can start, you can still transfer even if a college doesn't have an ADT. So for example, at West Valley, we don't have an ADT for computer science. We have lots of students who beyond the CSUs, students, oh, and this right here is a list of the ADTs that we have at West Valley. So just to give you a little bit of a context, I put a little asterisk next to the most popular ones. For transferring to UCs, again, minimum of 60 units to be able to transfer. And then I've listed here the top 5 transfer UCs for West Valley. My guess is that these are the top 5 transfer UCs for De Anza, for Foothill, for any of the community colleges in the area. I wanted to give you a context that indeed students do start at the community college and they transfer to all of the UCs. Next slide. For the UCs, they have something unique called a transfer admission guarantee, a TAG, transfer admission guarantee. That's where you complete 30 units in specific courses at the time of application. Your application isn't binding and not all majors are accepted, but it's available at 6 of the different campuses. If you can click, it'll bring up the box showing the. So this right here gives you an idea of what the GPA would be for Davis, Irvine, Merced, Riverside, Santa Barbara, and Santa Cruz. You'll notice Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego aren't on here. They do not have a transfer admission guarantee. Students still get into them, but they don't have a guarantee. One of the things I didn't share in my introduction is I'm also a mom whose daughter just graduated from high school last year. I've just seen this process from that vantage point. In addition, I was a high school counselor for over a decade. And so throughout my career, I've seen this college piece from a variety of viewpoints. And right now it's really, it's difficult for students leaving high school. They don't have a guarantee leaving high school that they can get into a UC. This right here, if they start at a community college, they can have a guarantee. Next slide. The UCs are very committed to the transfer process. In fact, 1 out of every 3 new students on their campus is a transfer student. So 2 are incoming freshmen, 1 would be a transfer student. Next slide. In addition, we have students who start at the community college and then they choose to go out of state, out of country, or to private schools. A whole range of options for students who are starting at community colleges. Next slide. So all community colleges offer transfer pathways. We all offer career pathways too, but this is where it's going to get unique, right? Because each community college is going to specialize in certain areas. And so over the next minute, I'm going to give you a brief overview just so you get an idea. For example, when I was a high school counselor, whenever I would have a student come in saying they wanted to be a firefighter, boom, I would recommend Mission College, because Mission College is the program and is the college in the area with fire science. They also have hospitality management and nursing. Next slide. De Anza has a variety of great programs: phlebotomy, automotive technology, network programming, film and TV production. Next slide. Foothill has vet tech, dental assisting, hygiene, paramedic, ironworking. Next slide. San Jose City has cosmetology, CNC machinist, esthetician, computer programming. Next slide. Evergreen, auto, surveying, nursing. Next slide. And West Valley, we're known for our fashion design, interior design, and park management programs. So that's where, if you're wanting to go for a career specific program, you're going to want to research the individual campuses. Community colleges also help students with skill building. So if you struggled a bit in high school, you can join us. We're going to help you out. And we have something else called Relaunch. So this is a 4th extra goal that we have. And that is, if you start at a 4-year college and you discover a semester in that it's not really a match, you know, you went away to Michigan and discovered you didn't like snow, or you became homesick, whatever the reason, the community colleges can help you relaunch. You're always welcome to return to us. We'll help you get on the path. Next slide. Community colleges have a super vibrant life. So from plays and musicals, rock climbing walls, we have activities for all sorts of students. And we also have athletic programs. So a variety of different programs. So if you're an athlete right now in high school, you can continue with us and we would welcome you to join us. And we have various clubs and activities to get you involved. Again, we want for you to feel connected. We want for you to be part of our community. We know that along the way, you might need some extra supports. And so community colleges will offer support. So if you had an IEP or 504 in high school, each community colleges has a program to help you. If you're first generation, if you're low income, we're going to help you. We're going to help all students with some tutoring, personal and academic counseling, laptops, hotspots. We want you to be successful. And so we will be there to help along the way. Next slide. And yes, it is true. Every community college gets money to offer you free tuition for 2 years. Now, this is the catch. Some community colleges might have a few different rules about it. And so you will want to start investigating with each community college how they do their free tuition for 2 years. I can guarantee all of them are going to require you to complete a FAFSA or a DREAM Act. And so, you know, Branham said they're having their financial aid night soon. Be sure to go to that when you're a senior. You know, you'll need to fill that out. Beyond that, the colleges will have a few different rules at West Valley. If you're full-time, if you go through our orientation program and you've done FAFSA DREAM Act, you're able to qualify for the free tuition. Usually the funding is limited, so you want to get ahead of the curve and take steps on that right away. Some next steps for you, since you're juniors in the room, be sure to tour colleges, be sure to research programs, be sure to attend orientation in the spring of your senior year, and you can also take a class while in high school. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I did want to put a quick plug that you can sign up for timely updates from West Valley. So even though along the way, this, I gave you an overview of the community college system. If you'd like to be on our list and you want to get information about our tours and about our open house that happens this spring, please go ahead, fill out the quick form. I'll send you an email. Usually I send out an email about once a month. It'll come from me. So again, my name is Amy Gutierrez. My email is listed there. I hope that that's been helpful to be able to get a quick overview about why community colleges offer you great opportunities as you continue your educational pathway.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I think we're off to Marlene for CSU.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you all for making it here today. So once again, my name is Marlene Perez. I am one of the admissions counselors and recruiters from San Jose State. I do want to give you all a little disclaimer that I am a representative from San Jose State, so I am not an expert on all 23 campuses, but I do want to share some of the similarities and differences between our campuses. So today we are going to be going over some of changes in our admissions. So for all CSUs throughout the entire CSU system, so all 23 CSUs are no longer going to be using the SAT or ACT exam scores for admissions purposes. So once again, the CSU campuses are no longer going to be requiring the SAT or ACT scores for admissions purposes. So if the student does happen to take the SAT or ACT for whatever reason, we are only going to be using those scores for placement purposes for prospective English and math course placements to see if they're going to test into a higher English class or maybe a remedial math class, for example. But what we are going to be doing is we are now going to be introducing some supplemental factors. And so these may vary throughout the colleges. So some of our more impacted campuses may have some supplemental factors, and they do vary between campus to campus. So I do encourage you all to do your research and see which campus does have what specific supplemental factors. So these are some examples. Most of the CSU campuses are currently using your A through G GPA. They're taking into consideration whether you're first generation, if you're low income, if you are foster youth, or if you are in the military, for example. But on the other hand, there are some supplemental factors that are specific to certain campuses. Typically, campuses that are more impacted or competitive, they are going to require some additional supplemental factors. So I can speak for San Jose State. For San Jose State University, our more impacted majors such as engineering, computer science, kinesiology, these more impacted majors are going to require some supplemental coursework. Another example from San Jose State is that for our engineering majors, due to its competitiveness, due to the high impaction rates in the engineering major at San Jose State, we are taking into consideration their math GPA. So those are some examples of campus-specific supplemental factors. Other campuses may look at work experience, extracurricular activities, maybe your English GPA or lab course GPA, right? So you can go to the next one. So this is a newer addition to the Cal State Apply application. So some of our, typically the CSUs do not look at extracurricular activities or work experience. For example, SJSU does not look at extracurricular activity or work experience, but due to the rising impaction, some of our other CSU campuses, like Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, will be taking educational programs and work experience into consideration. Once again, I do want to emphasize that the ACT and the SAT scores are no longer required for admissions to the CSU system. I do want to encourage you all to visit us at our virtual front desk at sjsu.edu/soar. You can email me, one of your counselors, at marleneperez@sjsu.edu. And please feel free to follow us on our social media at Future Spartans. We do post updates, workshops, deadlines, more about student life, and more. Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you so much, Marlene. We're off to Ms. Morella, who's stepping in as a UC rep also for tonight.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm going to do my best. Unfortunately, we were not able to have a UC rep here for this evening, but I attended the UC conference about a couple of weeks ago virtually, and one of their sessions was on the personal insight questions, or what we call the PIQs. So typically, when we do have a UC rep here, we ask them to talk about this piece, because this is usually the most challenging section for the students to complete in their applications. And so we really want to make sure that they're understanding that this section is different than if they're applying to private schools. Those are more of like an essay. These are not. And so what we call the PIQs, essentially there's 8 questions that the students can choose from. They are going to respond to 4 of them. It does not matter which question they choose. So they don't rate them. Really and truly, they want the students to choose the 4 questions that they feel like they can answer the most to, and that their voice will be heard throughout their 350 words. That's all they can use. So it really does have to be blunt, to the point. And so again, it's really focusing on which 4 questions that they feel like they can get their voice out within that short amount of response time. So some of the kind of tips that they've given to us as counselors that they want students to know is that really this is a chance for them to get personal. This is a chance for them, for the students to really share their stories to the UC reps that are reading their applications. It's different than the other parts of the application where they're putting in some data, they're giving their extracurriculars, but this is where they get to share their story. And so really they want to write it about themselves. So we will read them, and sometimes they're spending too long on why their grandmother was their inspiration, and they're sharing all the information about their grandmother, but there's a very short period where they talk about themselves. It needs to be the other way around. They're not accepting your grandmother, they're accepting your student. And so they really want to make sure that that 350 words is focused on the student. They're finding their voice, they can express through that question. And it's okay to use I statements. It's not an essay. So they can use that throughout answering that question. And then really just sharing relevant information about who they are, what matters to them, and then really answering the question that they are picking, especially if they're telling a story about somebody else. And so really just taking the time to make sure that they've kind of gone through it, that they're really sharing the most important parts because it's so short. And then kind of the insight. So when we're talking to students, when we've met with them, really we tell them the best way is to brainstorm. Figure out kind of which questions you want to go with, but then think about, what do you do in your free time? What do you like about yourself? What are you good at? What are your struggles at? How would people describe you? Getting some brainstorming together, so then it helps them. It's easier for them to try to write these PIQs. And then because they've done that brainstorming, it's easier to get to the why. Why are you playing that sport? Why are you doing that activity? Why did this event shape who you are? Why was that challenge the most important thing that you want to discuss in these PIQs? It gets them to really be thoughtful and insightful in those responses. And then really the biggest thing is the PIQs allow the UC reps to really learn who your student is, especially if sometimes there's not enough information in their regular application piece that they're writing. This is the chance for your students to kind of essentially brag about themselves or share something that might be personal. And so it's really important that they're including, soft skills, their struggles, their personal experiences. It's okay to get personal in these PIQs. It also allows them to understand the student on a more personal level outside of just the grades and the courses. What your students want to be careful of is that they're not already, when they've put a piece in the application already, don't then use one of these PIQs and explain the same thing. You want every piece of these applications to be different parts. So if you've already explained why you got a bad grade on a certain class, then don't use a PIQ to use for that same scenario. You want it to be things that are going to add to your application. And then all of the different campuses, they might read them for different reasons. They might be looking for specific themes across, persistence, positive self-identity, if they're demonstrating maybe a certain major, especially if that's what they're applying for. And then again, kind of that explanation of an academic difficulty. I will stress that if your students need to explain kind of a red flag on a transcript, so either their grades dipped for a reason or they got a bad grade, I would use the additional comment section in this application for the UC because they give you that. And it's in addition to these PIQs. So they could really write the PIQs on something else and then use that additional comment section to really more talk about if there's an area that they want to address that might be a cause for concern on their transcript. And then again, just that they're not looking for an essay, they're not looking for a writing sample. They really want, and they've stressed this every conference I've ever gone to, that they want the content, context, sorry. They want that personal piece, they want the voice, they want the depth. That's what they're looking for. So your students don't have, it's not a creative writing assignment. Really, they just want to hear the student's voice come alive in those PIQs.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mola. Thank you so much for stepping as an additional UC rep. Off to, I think this is Stephanie, is that right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Stephanie Ortiz Garcia, and I will be talking to y'all about the private school college process. And it's a little difficult to generalize it to all private schools in the United States, but I'll give y'all general kind of tips as well as information that could apply to most colleges and universities in the United States. And so I just wanted to kind of start off on where to start. And so I really like to share with families and students that there's going to be 3 different kinds of fits that are going to be very important for y'all to consider as your students are thinking about colleges and what is going to be a good fit and what universities they may be considering. And so I'd like to label them as academic fit. So making sure that the college or university has a program you're looking for, has the internship opportunities, or maybe research opportunities if your student is interested in that. So making sure that this school can offer that for your student. I also like to stress the importance of social fit. So thinking about what kind of environment does your student want to be in? Do they want to be in a big city like San Francisco, or do they want to be in a smaller city, college town like Davis? Do they want to be on a college campus of 20,000 students or on a college campus of 5,000 students? So thinking about that social fit is very, very important for your students' success in higher education. And then also, most importantly, financial fit. So thinking about what is going to be financially feasible for you and your family, what is going to be comfortable, not only for just your first year, but all 4 years of undergrad. So making sure that when your student is thinking about what colleges and universities are going to be great fits, to consider these three fits. Next slide, please. And so thinking about these steps of the application, so private colleges and universities in the United States will be taking the Common Application. So making sure you are submitting the Common App. There could be some colleges that may use their own application. So it's really important to look up the specific information for the private schools that you may be considering across the United States. And so in the Common Application, you'll be going ahead and filling out, or your student will be filling out their information in terms of background information, as well as extracurricular activities, their personal statement, as well as a supplemental question if the college or university they're interested in does require one. Looking at the student's high school transcript, so making sure your student is submitting that. Typically unofficial or official will suffice for our students, and so making sure you are submitting that. And then for the extracurricular section, this is going to be a very important section for your student in terms of looking at what are they involved in outside of the classroom. Most colleges and universities do want students who are involved in some capacity. And we always like to say that it's definitely quantity versus quality. So we don't necessarily expect students to overload themselves or stress themselves out in terms of thinking about, oh, I have to be really involved. I have to be in at least, 7 different organizations or internships or volunteer positions. We really want students to show us what they're passionate about, what they're really interested in through their extracurricular activities. And we just really really want to see what students are doing outside of the classroom. So again, it's not necessarily thinking about filling up the whole list on the common application section, but just thinking about what is it that your student is passionate about that they want to share with us as admission counselors. And then looking at the personal statement, this is another very important part of the application. This is going to be the section where we get to know students beyond just their GPA or their test scores. We really want to get to know students in terms of thinking about them as applicants, but also as young adults, as they're about to graduate high school, as they're about to embark and going into higher education. So we want to know, what are students excited about? What are they passionate about? What have they learned throughout their time, maybe in high school, and what lessons they have learned along the way? And so this is going to be a great moment for us to get to know them a little bit further and for them to share with us information that maybe they haven't shared before in the application. And I always like to stress to students that this is the moment in your personal statement where you want to brag about yourself, where you want to really talk about your accomplishments and really talk about, who you are as a student. So just making sure that you always bring it back to your students' identity as well as experiences in what they're sharing with us in their personal statement. And most colleges and universities, some of them may have a supplemental question specifically for USF. We definitely have one for our students. And so again, it can vary from college to college, but the supplemental question is going to be another insight to your student in terms of who they are as a person, as an applicant to their college or university. Typically, a supplemental question is going to be just a shorter version or a short response. Typically about a paragraph or two is the expectation, whereas a personal statement is a full essay. So supplemental question is smaller, but it is just as important for our students to really put in that effort and time to respond to the supplemental question to, again, show us who they are as a student applicant. And then I put asterisks around letters of recommendation and test scores because prior to the pandemic and even during, a lot of universities and colleges have been in deep conversation about, do they go back to requiring test scores, or do we, make it a more equitable process in kind of doing away with test scores, or do we make letters of recommendation optional? So I highly encourage you and your students to look at the different colleges and universities and what they require. Specifically at USF, we don't require letters of recommendation or test scores in the application process. And so it can vary again school to school. So making sure you do that research with your student to make sure that you know exactly what they require. But again, most colleges and universities, if they are making it optional, then it does mean that a student does not have to submit it. Maybe if a student is just as strong with just their high school GPA and filling out the application, that can definitely help them in the process. But again, it's really important to do that research because some colleges and universities, especially private schools, may still require maybe test scores for merit scholarship or some other aspect of the application process. So definitely important to look at the specific universities and colleges your student may be considering. But again, a lot of the private schools in the United States are looking to contextualize the application process to your student. We understand that everyone has their life experiences, especially through the current pandemic. It has really shown us that we definitely have to extend that grace and compassion to students, especially during this application process, which can sometimes be a little daunting or overwhelming. So just making sure to remind your student to definitely take that deep breath and remember this is supposed to be exciting as well, because you are thinking about, what is going to be your next step in higher education. But super important, again, to do that research for specific colleges you may be considering. And then at the end, I put the FAFSA application. Most colleges and universities will have the same deadline for your FAFSA application for financial aid, as well as the deadline for the actual application through the Common App. And so making sure, again, you check those deadlines to submit everything on time. And for students who are undocumented in the state of California, you can submit applications like the California Dream Act, AB 540, to be still considered for financial aid. And most private schools, and to use USF as an example, we do offer merit scholarships and need-based financial aid to undocumented students as long as you submit that application. So overall, definitely making sure that you are submitting all the supporting documents that you need to be considered for financial aid. And this is a really great conversation to have with your student about financial feasibility, thinking about what is going to be something that is attainable and comfortable for you and your family, to make sure that you have that conversation throughout your time or with your student, as well as your student having the conversation with their counselors, their teachers, folks who are supporting them in this process as well. And then here I included 6 things to do in the next 6 months for your students. If you wanted to take a screenshot or if you want to take a picture of that and save it for later, I think this is really helpful for students to kind of get them organized for next year. I know it still feels a little bit far away until students start applying next year as seniors for their colleges and universities, but it will definitely be here a lot sooner than you know. So making sure that you are doing these steps, these are just suggestions, it's not necessarily rules for the application process, but it would be really helpful for students to create an email account that they will use for college communications. I know that a lot of universities and colleges love to send out emails, and so we want to make sure that we aren't overwhelming your students. So if they want to create a separate email account, they can definitely do that. And also creating a spreadsheet to keep track of the college research application deadlines and requirements is super, super helpful, especially if students are planning to apply to the CSUs, UCs, and private schools. It'll definitely help to keep students organized during that process. And then identifying who at the school will be a resource for your students. So again, counselors, teachers, anyone that is there to support students, to know who they are so they can go ahead and start having those conversations in preparation for next year. And we highly, highly encourage y'all to attend college events. So even if that's virtual, in person, maybe a hybrid from your local universities and colleges, but also maybe if you're able to take the trip down to Southern California or maybe to out of state, that would be really great to kind of get a sense of not only the university in terms of the information, but also the vibe of being on campus and the energy of being there in person. And then also making sure that students make time to review their college essays and the prompts that they are offered. So thinking about the writing process, and again, making sure they are connecting with that support system at their high school. And then last but not least, making sure that identify teachers to write letters of recommendation for them, thinking about building those positive relationships with not just teachers, but maybe other adults in the community too. Again, not every university and college across the United States will require letters of recommendation, but if they do, this would be a really great place to start talking to those teachers or folks in the community that will go ahead and write them those letters of recommendation. So just 6 things to do in the next 6 months. Definitely hope that was helpful. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to go ahead and submit them through the Q&A function. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We're off to Oregon with Ruth.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Ruth Rodriguez, and I'm an assistant director in the Office of Admissions at University of Oregon. I do want to say that I am what's called a regional rep, and so I get to live in Northern California and recruit students, and I'm actually from California. And so as you start going through this process as students or as families, I think it's really important to keep in mind that there's some great options for colleges outside of California. Oftentimes when people start thinking about it, they're a little bit afraid of what the cost will be because they think it'll be too expensive, especially if students are considering public out-of-state school and they'll be out-of-state tuition. But there's resources and tools out there that students can utilize to make going out-of-state more affordable. And that includes the Western Undergraduate Exchange called WUI. And by the way, UO does not participate in WUI. So I wanted to start with that note. So Western Undergraduate Exchange can be long words, so we always refer to it as WUI. And so it's pronounced very differently than it is spelled. But ultimately what it is that there is an organization of all, there's an organization that oversees the WUI process, which includes the Western states. And this is a regional tuition reciprocity agreement. Now, it doesn't make out-of-state tuition in-state, but it actually makes it 150% of in-state tuition. And so this is only for public universities, and each university can choose to participate or not. But there are over 150 colleges and universities that participate, and this goes for both 2-year schools and 4-year schools. So ultimately what it is, it's a tuition reduction program, okay? So it makes it more affordable for students to look at universities in the western part of the United States. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, what it does is that students pay 150% of in-state tuition at each university that participates. So for example, if an out-of-state school's out-of-state tuition was $10,000, I'm sorry, let me start again. If an out-of-state school, if a university's in-state tuition is $10,000, then an out-of-state student getting WUI would only pay $15,000 and maybe not its true out-of-state tuition because again, it just reduces tuition. So when you're doing your research and you're going on websites for universities, you can see that universities will then publish 3 different tuition rates. So you would see the resident tuition, which means a student who's attending who lives in the state that the university is in, non-resident tuition or out-of-state tuition, and then WUI tuition. So again, it just makes it a little more affordable for students to look out of state. But it's important to note, like, again, universities have to choose to participate and they can each implement WUI differently. So it's important to note the states that participate, and they're on this map. And you can see it's kind of sort of Colorado West. And as I mentioned, each university can implement it very differently. There's requirements, there's restrictions. So some universities will only give WUI to certain students. It depends on their major. It could be implemented as a merit scholarship. So there could be GPA and or SAT, ACT criteria, depending on each school. It's not always automatic. Some universities require students to apply and request for WUI tuition. If they have an application process, they also sometimes limit how many students will get WUI. And some universities require students to fill out the FAFSA and there be a income threshold that they have to meet. But ultimately, the most important thing to note is that as you start doing your research, if you haven't already started thinking about out-of-state schools, there is ways to make it affordable. And one way that you could start your research process is by going on the WICHE website. And that is the organization that oversees the whole WUI process. And they'll list the universities that participate. And then it's best after you find those universities to go on those individual universities' websites to learn exactly how they implement WUI. But it's a great tool. It's a great resource. And I do have to repeat again that UO does not participate in WUI. I wish we did, because it would make my job a lot easier. But I did want to talk about this topic, even though I don't work for a university that uses WUI. I have in the past, and I think it's really important for families and students to know that it's an important tuition reduction program that you can utilize. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and all the rest of the panelists. We're off to the college panel Q&A. We do have some questions prepped ahead of time, but I think it's important that we address any questions that parents might have. As a quick reminder, the raised hand feature is not an active feature, so any questions that you do have, please go ahead and put them on the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to ask the rest of my colleagues to also help me just monitor the Q&A so that we can answer any questions that you as parents might have. And then otherwise, we do have some other questions that generally we can ask the panelists. So for the rest of my colleagues, are there any questions that, or Ms. Chomet, any questions that we need to address first from the Q&A section?
Mr. Lopez, I think you're good to move to your section.
Okay.
Oh, okay, great. We'll do that. So one of the questions we had is, please tell us how the teacher or teachers and counselor letters of recommendations are used during the admissions review process.
That might be for Stephanie. So I don't know if you want to chime in on that part.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the last part of that?
Oh, sure. So please tell us how the teachers and counselor letters of recommendation are used during the admissions review process.
Yes, definitely. So for the letters of recommendation or any kind of additional information for the application, it really serves as a insight to the student, and not only in their academic progress in high school, but also who they are as a person and their personal growth. I think a lot of the times counselors, teachers, anyone prominent in a student's kind of high school career can definitely share a little bit more sometimes from a different perspective than through the application itself. So it's a really great tool for any kind of context that can be important for the student's application. So let's say, for example, we have maybe a student who started off really strong their first year of high school, and then maybe their sophomore year, their grades took a little bit of a dip in comparison to their first year grades, but then we see that they picked up their grades their junior year and then going maybe into senior year, and maybe the counselor can offer some insight. Maybe that year student was really struggling with some personal kind of issues, or maybe something was happening in their life, which we completely understand as admission counselors that life does happen. And so being able to have that insight from a counselor or teacher, or maybe even someone from the community that can shed some insight to that, it can be really helpful for us as admission counselors to really think about that experience that the student has gone through, but also thinking about their potential as well to be successful in higher education. So really useful for students who can have that kind of context added to their application.
Should I go on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, regular decision, early action, or early decision. Is there an advantage to applying during each of these cycles?
That will also be, I think, for Stephanie.
Yeah, I could definitely jump in. So for early action, early decision, the biggest difference between those two is that for early action, it is non-binding, and for early decision, it is legally binding. And what that means is that for early decision, students will sign a contract with themselves as well as the parents and counselor to say that they will be attending said university no matter any other offer letters or financial aid. So it is a binding contract. And you do have a little bit of an advantage typically for early decision. You may have a higher kind of chance of being admitted directly into the university, because early decision does show that a student that this is pretty much the school that they are going to commit to. And then early action is non-binding. So you do have the same benefits of finding out early whether or not you've been admitted, as well as showing your high interest in a university or college, but it is non-binding. So you don't have to sign a contract, and you can still wait for other offer letters from other universities and colleges to see what is going to be the best fit for your student. So early action, early decision, typically also students will not have their grades ready yet for their first part of senior year. So if students are taking AP, IB classes as a senior and they want those extra points in their GPA, then I would recommend regular decision. Regular decision does allow for us to be able to consider their grades from the first part of senior year. So that can definitely help in the admission process. And it does give you a little bit more time to fill out the application. And typically, if you have to submit your application by, let's say, January 15th, you'll find out typically about mid-March, and then you have until about May 1st to decide. So usually a quicker turnaround in terms of regular decision, but again, it just depends on where your students' grades may be at, as well as the interest that they may have in a college or university. So early action, early decision, regular decision, all great option. There is no penalty at all for a student to apply with any deadline, as long as they are submitting their application for which option may fit the best for them.
Thank you. And now we have a question from one of our attendees. Is there any consideration on financial support if a family or single parent? Okay. Yes, let me finish this. If a family or a single parent who has twins in college or multiple kids in college. Danielle, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, no, I wasn't going to answer. I just marked it that you were going to answer it live with the panel.
Okay, can one of the panelists comment on that, please?
I can jump in. For families who may have students who are, let's say, have twins attending college already, and they're preparing for another one of their children or student to be ready to attend a college or university, there is some consideration in the application. You can list any siblings that are currently in another college or university. Speaking for USF specifically, on the common application, we do have a section we can go ahead and add that into the application. And Ultimately, it may not necessarily change your whole financial aid award or application, but it can be considered in the process. It just sometimes depends on the college or university. It may make a difference, it may not. So definitely connecting with your admission counselor for the universities and colleges you're considering is going to be super important to see what they say on the topic. But typically for most colleges and different schools, you'll be able to go ahead and list any siblings or other children that you may have that are also in higher education.
If I can maybe jump in for maybe Ruth and Marlene, and I think also to Amy, one of the questions that we often get asked from students and then also from parents is this whole like applying as undeclared. How does that weigh into the application process? How does that impact any, you know, sort of how the admissions rep might be viewing the student's application? I don't know if Marlene, maybe you want to start with San Jose State and then we can go to Ruth and Amy.
Sure. So we do have the option for our students to apply as undeclared. So this does give students the opportunity to really explore the different majors that SJSU does offer. In addition, it does give students the option to take classes in different courses to see if they were leaning towards a certain major or another. And they could also join student organizations, get involved on campus, speak to professors, faculty, and get involved to see and really make that decision of what major really does interest them.
I think this is a great opportunity to mention that what happens in California really only happens in California. So I think that, and again, as I said, I'm from California. I'm actually an alum of both CSUs and UCs, and I worked at both. And higher education opportunities here in California are amazing, but higher ed works very differently out of state. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind as you ask these questions and not assume that it works across the country. So oftentimes when people ask about applying undeclared or impacted majors, how will that impact an application? If you ask a regional rep or a rep from an out-of-state school, they're going to say, what are you talking about? They don't understand the term impacted because it's not used outside. And so know that for many universities across the country, it's very easy to come in undeclared. You typically have till the end of your second year to declare a major. Universities help you explore majors to see what's the best fit for you. It's very easy to change your major. It's easy to double major. And so for UO, applying undeclared has no impact on the application, both positive or negative. A student is just applying undeclared.
Amy, do you want to chime in on this question too?
Yeah. And I think too, undeclared students love community colleges, right? So community colleges really offer a student an opportunity at a low cost to be able to explore some different options and to be thoughtful as they prepare to continue their studies. And so, it's not uncommon at all for people to choose to come to a community college for either financial reasons or because they really don't know yet what they want to do. And because they think they want to stay in the state of California, they feel like they need to have more clarity before they start spending more of the money on tuition. So community colleges welcome all, and especially those who are undeclared.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And then just a quick note, we have another 5 or so minutes with our panelists. So for parents that have any questions that you want to ask the panelists, please go ahead and do that. There's a question about CSUs. Is there a commitment to accepting a higher percentage of students who live locally for San Jose State? This one in particular for Marlene.
Yes, so I do want to state that we do have a local preference for students who are graduating from a Santa Clara high school or a Santa Clara community college. So we do give preference to students in our Santa Clara counties. Yes, this is true.
And then this is another great question, I think, for everyone, for all the panelists, if you could answer. How challenging is it to change a major once you're already at the institution?
So since I'm already on, I can speak on this as well. So we do not guarantee at SJSU that you will be able to change your major. It is a possibility. You would have to first complete a semester in the major that you originally picked. Then you would have to do a petition process. And because SJSU is impacted throughout all of their majors, we do not guarantee admission into a different major. So we really, really do want to emphasize that you apply to SJSU with the intended major that you want to complete at SJSU, because we do not guarantee that you will be able to transfer into a different major. It is a possibility, but it is not guaranteed.
And then Ruth, how about at U of O? I know this is kind of specific in a way to your school. I know it's not a, sort of all out-of-state schools is the same thing, but how does it typically work at U of O?
And I would say, I think we're a great example of what many universities can do. And so at UO, as I mentioned, we don't have impacted majors. It's not difficult to change majors, but we do have some selective majors. And what that means for us is that students have to demonstrate their talent or ability for these majors. And there's not that many of them. At UO, it's product design, architecture, interior architecture, art and technology, music, business and journalism. And so for many of those, when students are there and they want to go into those majors, they have to apply into the major. And so, for example, like product design and architecture, students would have to submit a portfolio to demonstrate their talent for the artistic side of those programs. And then faculty review those, and then they could be accepted and change their major. For journalism and business, what they do is students are required to take certain classes, meet a certain GPA, and then they can apply into the major. As long as they meet in the minimum requirements, they can get in. So it's a good example of knowing how universities do things differently, but students always have the opportunity at UO to be able to change their major if they want.
And then Amy and Stephanie, did you want to chime in on this question as well?
So, at the community college, we're used to students changing their major. I will say that if a student started out thinking that they wanted to do something like psychology and they switched to engineering, which is more math intense, it might take them a bit longer just because they would need to have more of a sequence of math courses. And so we're totally flexible. We allow students to do it. It might take them a little bit longer, but they are welcome to change their major along the way.
Stephanie?
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap it up with this question, but in terms of looking at USF for majors, we do allow students to change their majors within the first 2 years, or really any time while they're at USF. But if you do it within the first 2 years, you're still on track to graduate in 4 years. The only exception to that would be nursing and engineering. Those are 2 direct entry programs at USF. And I think overall at most universities and colleges, if you have direct entry programs, typically you may not be able to switch into them later. So it's really important to know from the beginning if a program that you're interested in is direct entry only, and then being able to move forward in that way. But at USF, you can pretty much change into any major that you're interested in. All you have to do is have a conversation with your faculty advisor to make sure that you're able to complete the major in the time that you have left at USF. And we always welcome undeclared students as well. And again, the only majors you cannot switch into later are going to be nursing and engineering.
Great, thank you, everybody. And we're right at 7:30. That's kind of what we plan for college panelists to join us tonight. I know you're doing this out of your, own time outside of your work hours. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll move on to the counseling. It's a brief presentation from Branham counselors, and I think at this time we can dismiss our college panelists. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and sharing great information, and all the slides again will be posted on our website for parents to reach out to you if there's any additional questions moving forward. So thank you, everybody. And then moving on to our presentation, I think this is Ms. Vansa will be starting us with a brief review of graduation and A30 requirements. And again, this is a brief presentation from counseling, about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we have additional time for questions and answers at the end. So Ms. Vangsa.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Once again, I am Ms. Vangsa, So this is a overview of the graduation and A through G requirements. You know that it's the high school, it aligns with the A through G requirements for the CSU and UC. If you look at it, there's 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 2 years of history, 2 years of world language, 1 year of visual performing arts, 1 year of college prep elective. And the last 3 there are just for our high school purposes, 2 years of PE. And then you can have an additional year of visual performing arts, and then also 20 credits, which is 2 years of general electives. Next slide. And this is alternate ways to earn your high school diploma. We have the Boyne Continuation High School. Typically, this is typically referred by the counselor for students who are needing credit recovery. They're deficient in their credit. We also have the Campbell Adult and Community Education for students who are wanting to earn their high school diploma that way, or their GED. And then we also have the CHIPSE, which is the California High School Proficiency Exam. Test dates are typically held every fall and spring semester, so you can check that website there for more details. And this should be your students' junior year goals. We want to make sure your academic preparation, maintain good academic standing in all of your classes, course planning for the next year. We will start meeting with you starting in November. If you're taking the AP classes, please plan to take the exam in spring. Once again, like what Stephanie was saying, there's the SAT and ACT exams will not be required for the UC and the CSU, but it is. But if you are wanting to go into a private school or out-of-state school, you want to make sure, verify with them if it's required, if it's an option, or if it's not required at all to be admitted to their schools. Involvement. Continue to be involved in your clubs, sports, community services, whatever that you are involved in. This is not like what Stephanie was saying earlier. This is not a matter of quantity, but it's a matter of quality and the commitment of the types of activities that you are participating in. They don't want to see you jumping from one sport to the next sport, one activity to the next activity. There is no right amount of involvement. We are more interested in the depth of your commitment and achievement than in the sheer quantity of your activities, and that is from Stanford University Admissions Office. This is your year. This junior year is your time for your college and career research. You want to start your college essays, your personal insight questions at the UC system. You want to start your college search, your college long list, attend any college fairs that interest you, whether it's webinars or the websites. And if you have the chance opportunity, visit the campuses and start having that conversation about college finances with parents and the college admissions people. So, thank you.
So I will go ahead and I will, go over the next few slides. So this first image is a nice image that breaks down the types of colleges that we've talked about this evening and what they need for application. So for example, letters of recommendation are needed by community colleges, CSUs, are not needed by community college, CSU, UC, but they are needed for private schools. So this image will be in our presentation where you can refer back to now, and then as you're entering your senior year, this is also in our senior night presentation as well. So we've also talked a lot about post-secondary options, some of which were college, but we also know that college isn't for everyone. So we do want to touch on tonight vocational and training programs. So we do have certificate programs, apprenticeship programs, auto mechanic service programs, and cosmetology. A lot of our students get experience through our program SVCTE. If your student is interested in any of these or more, they can come in and talk to one of our counselors and we can help them shadow what our SVCTE program looks like. They have a great opportunity there for students to get internships and jobs. where they can learn about what they really want to, study after high school. So Amy Gutierrez talked a lot about community college and the TAG program that they offer there. But again, just want to reiterate that our community colleges in the area, they have what's called a transfer admission guarantee, where we have a program with certain universities that if they get certain requirements, they meet certain requirements, they're able to be admitted into those universities. She also talked about the Promise Grant, which allows students to have 1 to 2 years free of community college. And then typically this registration takes place in the spring semester of their senior year. We always try to have someone come on campus and help our students with the application and answer any questions. But this is kind of just an overview of what Amy went through.
Mr. Lieburn.
Sorry, I'm coming. Just so California public universities, you heard from San Jose State, and there are 23 public California universities. GPA qualifications are 2.5 or above. SAT, ACT are not required for admissions, but can be used for math and English placement. So your student wouldn't necessarily have to take their math or English placement tests there if they scored well enough on the SAT. University of California, you had Ms. Morella talk about the universities of California. A nice trivia question for the 9 campuses. There's really 10 campuses, but one is only used for graduate work, and that's the University of the California California University of San Francisco. Eligibility is 3.0 or above. Again, SAT and ACT are not required to be used, and you got a good lesson today on the PIQs and making sure that your students start those early and really focus and write and reread. Next. So private and out-of-state schools, we had USF. I attended USF, beautiful campus. And we had Oregon. So you got a little insight to what they do. GPAs vary greatly from 2.1, 2.2, all the way up to 4.0 plus. So it really is all over the board. Most of them follow the A to G type requirements. They might have some more specialized requirements in there, such as requiring a 4th year of science and requiring a 4th year of math. So you got to check on those. You need to really check on those campuses, whether they want an SAT or an ACT. Some schools or a lot of schools are saying it's optional at this point in time, but you got to check with them. There are some schools that really like it. You've learned a little bit about the essay process and writing the essay and really selling the individual student outside the classroom. You also learned that there could be a supplemental question on a lot of these applications. So make sure your student takes time to write answers to those questions and not just send them off really fast. Take time, read, reread, those kind of things. And then letters of recommendation. So some of the schools will need letters of recommendation. As one of the counselors said from our admissions people from USF said they don't anymore, that they're getting away from that. But a lot of schools still require that. And they can require anywhere from 1 to 3 from teachers and an additional 1 from a counselor. So make sure your student checks into that. Thank you.
And I think this is the second to last slide, is this college selectability. It's one thing to be eligible in terms of a GPA and what you look like on paper. It's another thing to be applying to those highly selective schools or a highly competitive program or a major. So being eligible doesn't necessarily guarantee an admissions to a particular university. So really being mindful of what is it that they're looking for, your academic record, the transcript, your GPA, your A through G requirements, coursework beyond the minimum required, and also the level of senior year curriculum. So that's something that we check in with students about when we have those junior one-on-one meetings, is looking at what the senior year should look like, depending on what those post-secondary plans are. Involvement outside the classroom, continue with those sports, clubs, volunteer service, work experience, etc. And then commitment to those activities. I think that's something that we always try to emphasize is quality over quantity. So really showing the school that you're committed to a particular thing that you've done over time. It just shows a lot of commitment from you as a student. And then the writing component, if it's required, for example, the UC with the PIQs and then the personal essays for common application schools, really the college rep who's looking at your application on paper is not going to know the student. They're not going to know who they are beyond the transcript and beyond what's on paper. So really giving them context as to who you are as a student, as to who your child is as a student, is incredibly important to provide that context for them. College entrance, this should say college entrance exam requirements, so I apologize for that, if required. And so some schools are still requiring them as part of the application process. Some are now optional, but what does that really mean? So we got to really investigate what it means for each of your campuses if it's a test optional school. And then if they're not, then there's no need to necessarily put those test scores in the application. And then keeping in mind that some colleges are generally impacted. I believe it was Marlene who shared at San Jose State, a school of I think roughly 30,000 students. They're impacted pretty much at every program for San Jose State. And there might be some that are even more impacted within certain departments or majors. STEM field is always typically very impacted. So again, it's really important for us to highlight those things that sometimes being eligible doesn't always guarantee an admission. So really being mindful of what that means for each of your students. And I think this is off to Ms. Morella.
Correct. So one of the things that we're always working with our juniors on, and we will be meeting with every junior individually starting once we come back from Thanksgiving break. So that's where we'll go over their graduation status, their transcripts, and then also kind of discuss their courses for next year. But in those conversations we're usually having with them is starting to really look at what options do they want after high school? And we do it individually because we really do want to tailor the conversation for your individual student. But if they are looking at college, so four-year colleges, we do recommend that they start researching early, that they're building a kind of sample college list. Basically, what we tell students is when they return from summer break, they should have their college list ready to go, or it should be pretty much finalized. I will say with what we're seeing with our senior class right now, it's really important that students start looking at college more on the broad scale. And so not necessarily looking at schools that you hear of all the time, but really looking at what is that college fit? What do you want out of the school? Do they have the major? Do they have the location, the weather, the program, sports? What is it that is most important, and making sure that that college has it? So what we use the phrase of, it needs to be their college fit. So not necessarily the name of the school, but if they're going to be on that campus for anywhere between 4 years to 6 years, they want it to feel like home. So really they should be starting that process within their junior year. I always recommend to students that if you're going on any vacations and you are going to be near a college campus, go check it out. It's great to get on a college campus, get a vibe, see what they look like. If you can take a tour, tours are great. If you can't, that's okay. I always recommend to students that if you can do a tour, actually go sit in their student union center or their cafeteria and just people watch for a little bit. You're going to get a really clear vibe of what the campus is because that's where all the students hang out. We have provided a couple different search engines for you and for your students. The main one that we will direct students to is Naviance. Naviance is going to be where they can search colleges throughout the entire United States, and I believe even internationally now. And so one of the pieces in there is called a super match search. What I like about it is they can put in basically their preferences. What do they want? They want a big school, a school here in California. Do they want certain majors, certain programs? And so it'll basically filter it out to 90% of the school fits that criteria or 85%. So it helps them kind of narrow down that list so it doesn't seem so daunting. Big Futures through College Board, it does something very similar. The one piece I like about Big Future is under their admission area for each of the colleges, it breaks down by percentage what GPAs they took. So if your student wants to know where the majority of the students came for their GPA, it will give you that broken down. So they took 65% from this GPA breakdown, and they only took 10% from this breakdown. So it gives the students a really clear idea of where their GPA will land for that school. The last one is called Niche. I like it because it's kind of like a review of the school. So when I was in college, you could do like rate your professor. It's kind of the same idea. So you're rating the school, it's reviews from the students. And so I like using all three of these because the first two are going to give you more background that the institution themselves want you to know, but the last one is going to give you what the students want you to know. So it gives you kind of a whole picture. So really this would be the piece to look at. One other, because we know, like we said tonight, that college is not for everybody. On the vocational slide, the I can go to college, that's where I would recommend that your students are looking if they want to go into a trade school, to a vocational school. I would highly recommend that your students look at the community colleges first for their certificated programs because they're offering that promise grant. They're offering that free tuition versus paying for a private vocational program. So if your students are more on a vocational program plan, then I would look back at that slide, and we did include that link for you, and they can search across the community colleges what programs are out there.
And other than that, that's it from our counseling brief presentation. We do have a couple more minutes for parents to go ahead and ask us questions. I think at this point I can probably stop share so that we can help monitor the Q&A. So any questions that parents may have, please feel free to go ahead and use the Q&A feature so that we can go ahead and answer those for you. And I think there's one maybe for Ms. Chomet, if you can help us answer college visits. How does that work at Branham? I know it's something that I think is happening in College and Career Center.
Correct. So we work with a tool called Rep Visits, and reps will sign up for different visit slots that are either during a tutorial period or a lunch period. So once the reps sign up, I then post the reps visits on Canvas. So when your student goes onto Canvas, they can look at a calendar date and see which college will be speaking on a particular day. So once they identify the school that they would like to, whose presentation they would like to sit in on, all they have to do is come to the College and Career Center, which is room 45 during the appointed time, and the rep will be giving a presentation and answering questions in about 30 to 35 minutes. And they can also bring their lunches. So once the presentation is over, oftentimes the schools will ask them to fill out an interest card, and they will leave students as well with some brochures and some takeaway information about the college as well. So that's it.
Great. And it sounds like that's also a great way for students to get in touch with college admissions officers that way. I think the other one that typically is great is for students to go to those college fairs and be able to contact admissions reps that way as well.
And also, I'd like to add that it's another great way to do a college visit. So pick the brain of the college rep that is in the College and Career Center. Ask them about the weather, ask them about class size, ask them about, let's say, you may have a learning challenge or a learning difference. What are the resources available to help the student on that particular college campus? So if you can't go visit a college when you're going on your vacation, you can certainly visit the college by coming to the College and Career Center, listening to a presentation, and just picking the brain of the college rep.
And then how about Ms. Morella? When is a good time to find out if students have a guaranteed spot at a UC?
So they would be checking in with Miss Waite, our assistant principal. I believe they find that out towards the end of their junior year, if not early senior year.
Any PSAT prep classes at Branham? Not that I know of, but I don't know if my colleagues know.
We do not have a PSAT class.
But I will say that we have a plethora of PSAT prep books here in the College and Career Center that students may borrow and use to take the practice tests.
So that you would check in with Ms. Chomet, room 45.
Room 45.
How does the guaranteed spot work at a UC? I don't know if Ms. Bloom, Ms. Bangsa, Ms. Morella, I'm happy to answer if you want me to.
Essentially, if they do not get into the UC that they have applied to and that they would like to go to, then they will offer a spot at one of the UC's campuses. And typically that campus is going to be UC Merced.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Morella.
Mm-hmm.
Any last minute questions from parents? Go ahead and type them in the Q&A. And again, I'm just going to remind folks the recording along with the PDF of the presentation will be available hopefully tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to download the video and be able to upload it. Thursday at the latest, and there's the Student Services website. And then there's a question if the CSUs have a guaranteed option like the UCs. They do not. That's specific to the UCs. I think other than that, I don't see any other questions. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time spending with us with our college panel and counseling department. And that's it for us until next time. And thank you all so much for joining.